Hello everyone, and welcome to a new series I would like to call Geoguessr Deconstructed. The goal of the series will be to go through every single country and territory covered by Google Street View, and therefore Geoguessr, and give you a general idea of how to identify the country, as well as some region guessing and potential deeper dives into individual provinces or states, or things like that. The order of release will be starting in Canada, going south through North America and Central America, further south through South America, jump into Europe, and continue from there. Because of the size and therefore research required for some countries, the release schedule might be a bit inconsistent. I'll target weekly, but we'll have to see how it goes as things shake out in the future. So who am I? What are my credentials? Things like that. Well, I'm not a pro player. I've been playing the game for about 3 or 4 years now, and I've racked up a couple thousand games played and a pretty good idea of what I'm doing. I also do have a background in basically teaching people from scratch how to do something, I guess. I have past experience with speedrunning specifically. If you check back on this channel, my How to Speedrun Anything videos are kind of similar to this. So what is GeoGuessr? Well, at its core, it is effectively dropping you in a place in the entire world, well, anywhere covered by Google Street View, and it's your job to use the clues around you to figure out where you are. This is much easier said than done, as, there's the whole world to go off of, and there are infinitely many clues to figure out what country or region of the country that you're in. Some of these clues include the camera generation used to take the picture, which we'll talk about later, things like utility poles, car license plates, and things like that. The game is played competitively through things like challenges. Officially, there is the daily challenge, which is a daily challenge. You get 5 rounds to get as high of a score as you can. There are also leagues that are being played constantly, things like the Cactus League, the Reddit League. There are plenty of them. And finally, as you can see, there's the Geoguessr World Cup, which as of time of recording is currently happening. Day 1 just finished a couple hours ago, so I'm pretty excited to see how the rest of the World Cup will go. That is obviously the best of the best players, and this is kind of the big finale for this year. So let's go into some of the terms that you might encounter in GeoGuessr just in general play, or things you might hear on World Cup broadcasts, things like that. So first off is the 5K. So in this case, I know where I am, I have some info, there's the name of the city on this sign here, I know I'm in America because of the flag. Eventually I was able to narrow it down to this specific intersection. What a 5K is the maximum possible points you can get in one round. The distance required for a 5K differs depending on what map you're on. Basically, the boundary of the map determines the distance required to get a 5K. So in this case, I was within 7 yards. On a map like this one, being the United States, the requirement is probably 90, 100 yards, maybe a bit less. And that gives me a 5K. A 25K is 5 5Ks in one game, therefore the maximum possible score you can get in one game of GeoGuessr. A hedge is basically if you have a general idea of where you are, but you're not entirely sure. Maybe you think it's either the north or south of one country and you want to hedge, or hedge your bets basically. You go kind of between them, or maybe lean towards something you're more favoring. So for example, this round, I know we're in America, but I don't know exactly where. This could be the Northeast, this easily could be the South, so I'm going to hedge kind of the middle, maybe in Virginia here, and it was the North, so if I had gone South, that would have been a lot worse than if I had gone in the middle. Sort of similar, but more specific than a hedge, is a region guess. So for example here, there's really not that much in this round. However, these polls are specific to the Northern Territory of Australia, so I know that I can narrow my click down to the Northern Territory. So in this case, I'll go up here because that's where a lot of the coverage is, and this is my region guess, in which case it was really close. So I had a general idea of where it would be, so I went pretty close to it. A plonk is basically not really caring about where you're clicking, kind of what I've been doing the past couple times, but in this case, I know that I'm near this town along this one road. I know that's in here somewhere, so this one's here. I'm just going to click here. I don't really care about what exact road I'm on. I know I'm going to be pretty close, so let's just go with that. It was pretty close. It would have taken a while to actually line that up. Sort of the opposite of that, a pinpoint is actually pinpointing where you are. So in this case, I have a lot of info here. I'm outside this classic burger shop. There's this crossroad up here. I know that I'm going to be right around here. So we can also use the road angle. So as you can see, I'm pointing my compass north and panning straight down. So I can match up this with the actual street view. and I can see this classic burger right here. So I'm going to click here. So I've pinpointed the location for a 5K. A meta has kind of taken on its own form in the past couple of years in GeoGuessr. What a meta should be is referring to metadata. So basically things specific to Google Maps as opposed to the country or location that you're in. So meta would be the Google car antenna or the camera generation or even the copyright year. However, it's kind of taken on its own form in that things like these stone buildings are specific to Andorra, so this is Andorra meta. Technically not the correct term, but that's what it's used as in the GeoGuessr community. So because of these stone buildings, I know I'm in Andorra. Never mind the fact that I'm on the Andorra map, I just wanted to prove a point. A bollard is basically a pole that's used often on curves just to kind of guide a car into going around the turn or so that I can see the turn coming up. A lot of these are distinct to a certain country. So this one in specific, you will only ever see in Denmark. There is one kind of similar to it that you see in Belgium, but it doesn't have this little red strip on the top. A lot of countries in the world use this, but I know that this is Denmark. Again, don't mind that I'm on the Denmark map. A follow car is something used by typically the local government of a country just to ensure that the Google car taking the pictures is either safe or going where they should be going. So in this case, this police car that's following us is usually seen in Nigeria. There are some times where the follow car is not seen. There are other countries with a follow car, including Tunisia and Kenya. But most often you'll see a follow car refer to this police car in Nigeria, so I know that I'm in Nigeria. Coverage refers to everything that Google Maps has taken a picture of, basically. So in this case, all of these blue lines refer to streets or locations that you can click on and see a panorama. Panorama being what the image is called, the whole 360 image. So in this case, I can just click somewhere in Poland, and here we are. There is also unofficial coverage, which we'll get to in a second. A good way to look at only official coverage is to use this website. It is map-making.app. I'll include a link in the description, and it just shows you the official coverage. You can also set it to allow unofficial coverage, but we can see here places like Iran or Saudi Arabia are not covered, where on the Google map it looks like they are because someone else took those pictures. Knowing what countries have what coverage, so for example, the United Arab Emirates, almost all of the coverage is up by Dubai. So if you're guessing down here where there is no coverage, it's physically impossible to be there anyways. So generally, if you are in the UAE, basically click up here and you'll have a better shot of being right. So unofficial coverage is anything that is uploaded to Google Maps but is not taken by Google. So for example, this location is in Micronesia. Micronesia is not a country that Google Maps officially supports, but somebody took it upon themselves to upload either a panorama or just an entire street worth of coverage. NM and NMPZ refer to no move and no move pan or zoom respectively. This can be found in the game settings of any game you start. You can just click off the moving option so you aren't able to move, which is basically changing your location on the map, so clicking forward to like jump up on the street. Panning and zooming refers to moving around the map or zooming in. No move, pan, or zoom. Start the game and you just get this image. You're not allowed to move anywhere and you don't really have any other options. You get one image and that's all you have to go off of. Spill coverage is very interesting. So typically Liechtenstein has no coverage. Google Maps or Google Street View has not visited Liechtenstein to take pictures of their country. With one exception, there is a bridge where the Google Street View car coming in from Switzerland went a little bit too far over the Liechtenstein border and took a picture. So for all intents and purposes, this location is in Liechtenstein, although Google Maps doesn't officially support Liechtenstein. So the car kind of spilled over from Switzerland into Liechtenstein. There are only 6 or 7 locations in Google Street View that are like this. There's one in Guyana. You can find them in Venezuela, the Gambia, some other places like that. And they are very rare, but they do come up occasionally, so it's something to keep in mind. India was a country very recently covered in 2023 by Google. However, they use what is unaffectionately called Shitcam. So basically, this is 2023 coverage. You would expect it to look good with new camera technology. However, due to don't exactly know what. It was covered with less than ideal camera coverage, so you zoom in, you really can't read much. It's just not that good. This is different than camera generations, as I'll explain in a little bit, but overall, you'll see this type of camera in India, Ecuador, Cambodia, Sri Lanka sometimes, and also somewhere like Sao Tome and Principe. I referred to it a bit earlier, but there is such a thing as a camera generation. This is basically the camera technology that Google used to take street coverage. This is generation 1. It is the oldest coverage, in this case 2008, and it looks extremely bad. It looks like there's a layer of plastic wrap over the camera, kind of. Everything's really blurry, you can't make out any text, there's only a couple pixels. This is mostly found in the US and Australia, though it can be very, very rarely found in places like New Zealand or Canada. Generally, if you're playing a curated map, which is a map that somebody made themselves, you won't find these just because the coverage is just so bad. But if you're on an official world map or something like a Battle Royale, seeing this basically narrows you down to the US or Australia. Generation 2 looks comparatively a lot better, but still not as good as it could be. You can identify this by the wide circular ring around the bottom of where the Google car is, as well as, not a great view here, but you can also see a bit of a circle on the top. This is found in a lot more countries, but mostly it is useful in distinguishing South Africa from the other southern African countries, as only out of those South Africa has Gen 2, similar with this location being in Canada and the US. Canada has a lot more Gen 2 coverage than the US, so if you see a round that looks like this and you don't know if you're in Canada or the US, it is a much safer bet to go with Canada just because of this camera. Generation 3 looks the most normal so far. There really aren't any easy clues to identify it other than not being the other camera generations. It looks a bit dull, so in this case the sky kind of looks a little gray, it almost looks overcast despite probably not being, and a lot of the colors kind of just don't stand out, but it looks pretty normal. Generation 4 also looks very normal, except in this case the colors are a bit more vibrant. So in this case the sky is very blue, these oranges are very orange, things like that. You'll see this in places that have received coverage more recently, in this case June 2024, but Gen 4 goes back to at least a couple years. This helps, knowing the camera generation, especially between 3 and 4, can help with a couple countries, as some countries don't have every camera generation, some have it more than others, as I explained with Canada and the US. And yeah, having a general idea of which camera generation is used where, at least some vague specifics, as in knowing that Gen 1 is not used in Europe at all, Gen 2 is rarely used in the US or Mexico or places like that, should help a good bit. Next, we have Trekker coverage. So not all official Google Maps coverage is taken by car. In this case, we're in the middle of a park. Google outfitted one of their workers, with a backpack with a camera on it, and had them walk through this park. In this case, we are in Costa Rica, which, as of time of recording in September 2024, only has Trekker coverage in their capital of San Jose. So if you see a car, you're not in Costa Rica, at least as of now. Trekker coverage can basically be found in every country, or at least a lot of countries, and are most often limited to things like parks or national monuments or places like that, where you would typically not have a car. Again, we have Shitcam. This is not a camera generation. Like I mentioned, this was taken in 2023. This is in Lebanon, which is one of the newer countries, and the coverage kind of just looks bad. Have this massive blur on the bottom, kind of blurry. This is a bit better than India, but it just doesn't look good. I don't really know the exact reason why Google went for this. Maybe it's just a trial to see if there's enough interest in full street view, so they actually send a real car. But in the meantime, this is just pretty bad coverage. And finally, we have Lowcam. So as you can see here, this is the back of the Google car, and we're basically right on top of it. If you were to compare this to another view, you would see that the other view is just a lot higher. This is due to privacy laws in a couple countries. In this case, we are in Japan. Japan is exclusively covered by Lowcam, as is Switzerland, and some parts of Sri Lanka are as well. You can generally tell Lowcam just from the vibe, I guess. Like you feel like you're a lot lower to the ground. Sometimes there's also a much wider blur. You can't really see it too well here. A lot of the Switzerland rounds kind of look like Gen 2 coverage, but their blur is just a lot larger. Sometimes it's hard to distinguish Lowcam from not Lowcam, especially if you're on a hill. A lot of times if you're going downhill, it feels like you're a lot lower to the ground than you are. So use other clues to keep that in mind. But if you have a Lowcam like this, you're only ever going to be in Japan, Switzerland, or Sri Lanka, all of which have their own pretty easy clues between the three to figure out where you are. So going back to Geoguessr Deconstructed, which is the series that I'm working on, the general process for each country will consist of me kind of just talking about the country, where it places in terms of land area, population, some major cities, its capital, its location on the map, if you didn't know. And then we'll go into general identification techniques, such as any unique polls, any unique cars or follow cars, any specific Google Maps meta, license plates, things like that. And then from there, I'll try and go into more specific details. So for example, my first video is going to be on Canada. Somewhere like Alberta has their own specific bollard just for that province. I'll highlight things like that to help narrow the search down, as well as any possible terrain clues, like where mountains might be located, or just other relevant tips. Some fantastic resources for learning on your own include Plunkett. As of a couple days ago, they completed their goal of making a unique guide for every single country and territory, kind of like what I'm doing, on Google Street View. So for example, if I wanted to learn more about Italy, I could just click on the Italy page, get some ideas on, what camera coverage they have, what their license plates look like, bollards, things like that. I will be honest, a lot of my research for my videos will come from Plunkett, just because they are a very complete and good source of truth for GeoGuessr. A little bit of the opposite of Plunkett, instead of going country by country, GeoHints uses basically just, if I click the bollards page, there's a list of every single bollard by color and what country they can be found in. So if you see a bollard and you don't really know what country it's in, you can just look for it basically and say, oh, this red wedge-shaped one can be found in Poland. Finally, one of the largest spreadsheets related to GeoGuessr that I'm aware of is the Region Guessing Meta Library. This is a list of resources, again, per country and per territory, either made by Plunkett, made by people just that are diving into the country. So you can see Austrian city street signs. In case you're interested, these are what some of the major cities in Austria have based on their street signs. So you can get a very, very granular detail on region guessing within a certain country, just based on these guides. So thank you for checking out the first video in this series, just a general idea of what GeoGuessr is if you weren't already familiar. If you want to keep up with the progress of the series or just keep up with me in general, you can follow me on my socials that are found in the description. Like I mentioned earlier, the first video in the series will be on Canada. Expect that relatively soon. Also, let me know what you are looking forward to down in the comments. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.